Thank you, Brian, for being with us today.
Diana, it's an honor to be with you. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you taking time away from your vacation to actually do this. You're someone that adds value to so many people, and you're such an encourager. I watch you all the time. You find the greatness in people, and you've written 4 books, one of which is called Life Lessons. So I want to know, what are some of those life lessons that you think our listeners need to hear about?
Sure. First of all, Life Lessons, Diana, was a book that I actually wanted to write for my children. I wrote it when my children were small now. We have 4 grown children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and actually 1 granddaughter now, which she's 2 years old, and she's an incredible blessing. But at the time, when our kids were growing up, one of the things, the thoughts that I had, so I think ahead. I always think about what's going on today and preparing for today, and I also think about the future. And one of the thoughts that I had was how sad it would be if I wasn't around to instill the most valuable the most valuable lessons in life that I had learned and that my wife and I were instilling in each of our children. And so I thought, what a wonderful way to leave a legacy, even if they do end up growing up and they get all the lessons and I'm around for a very long time. And so I wrote a book that really is a classic personal development book, but just know that I was writing it specifically for our own children. And it's a really terrific book for high school graduates. It's a great graduation gift. It's a great college graduation present. And it really contains what I consider the most important lessons in life. And so the book starts out very sort of high level, dream big dreams is the first chapter. And it's about dreaming lofty dreams and how wonderful it is to have things to aspire to and wanting to be, do, and have great things. And so it starts out high level, lofty, creating value. And then it goes into the center of the book is more practical. The longest chapter in the book is called Achieve Financial Independence. And it's really not about getting rich. It's about not being in bondage to money. And you know, Diana, you come across a lot of people in the world who, even high income earners, who are held bondage to money because of the lifestyle that they live in relationship to what they earn. And so it's really, no matter how much money you have, there are some habits to develop in order to achieve financial independence. And then toward the end of the book, it goes back up to high level, away from the pragmatic achieving financial independence and developing success habits and then making them come true, some of those tactical blocking and tackling life lessons. And the last chapter, make each day your masterpiece. And so the last couple chapters are about the difference that we can make for others, the value that we can add to others, and the responsibility that we have. So with the gifts that we're given, we also, as you know, have a responsibility on how we steward those gifts. And so the last part of the book is along those lines, making sure that we're doing the absolute best that we can to live our best life, also to value people and add value to others in the process.
You know what's interesting about what you said? What are some things that you do to make certain that you're doing your very best every single day?
Well, one of there are a number of habits that I do, and what we learn over time is that it's not, goal setting is great, and I'm a big goal setter, and I have lots of goal setting processes. Although there's no magic to January 1st as being a goal setting day, that's a big day for me, and I sit down every day at the beginning of the year and set goals. And then I also have every quarter I get away for 3 to 4 days and I set goals. But what I've found is that it's not in setting the goals on a weekly or a monthly or a quarterly or a yearly basis. It's really about the habits that I'm doing every single day. And so what I try to do, my philosophy is life excellence, which is excellence in every area of life. I have a number of habits that I do every day, and that starts with getting up first thing in the morning and grab a cup of coffee, and I pull out my Bible and I have actually right now 2 other devotions that I'm reading. And so I do that every day. And there are other things that I do, maybe not every day, but multiple times during the week that relate to health and fitness and relationships and communication with others. And so my life, and I know Diana, your life is set up like this too. It's really the sum total of a whole bunch of habits that we do, and we're not even tracking them. Many of them are unconscious now, and we're just doing them on a daily basis. But in the beginning, I was very intentional about making a list of what those habits were. And so I don't know if you're familiar with Strength Finders, but a
Yes.
couple of my strengths are learner, and I know you and I share that, Diana, and also analytical. And so for me, and also achiever. And so as an achiever, one of the things that I need to do every day is check a box. And it could be something big. I could write an article, or I could give a talk, or appear as a guest on a podcast. But it could also be something as simple as emptying the dishwasher or flossing my teeth. And so when I'm starting a new habit, I actually write it down, and I use Post-it notes. So my life is run by Post-it notes. So I'll make a little box that says floss, and that's one of the things that I do. And as an achiever, when I get to put an X through the box after I've achieved it, then I've accomplished something. So for me, habits are really one of the most important lessons. And again, going back to the book, Life Lessons, A Guide to Creating and Living Your Best Life, developing success habits is actually one of the chapters in the book. And there are a number of habits contained in.
So give us a couple of the success habits that you'd like to see everyone have.
Certainly goal setting. So the habit of goal setting, of planning your life. A lot of people don't have a plan for how they live their life and the things that they do. And I'm very intentional about how I live my life. And the way that gets manifested is through goal setting, through actually writing down things that I want to accomplish. And there aren't a lot of people who, first of all, have goals, and even fewer of them write them down. But what research has found is that when we write them down, then there's something that goes, and I'm not a scientist, you probably know all the science behind it, but I do know and have read about that when we write down our goals, we actually plant seeds into our subconscious that help us to achieve those goals just by having written them down. I was talking to a friend a couple weeks ago, and she said that she writes down her goals, but then she never looks at them, and she doesn't take those goals and develop plans and break them down into step-by-step habits or steps in order to make them come true. She just writes them down. Every quarter, she writes down the things that she wants to accomplish, and she sticks them in a drawer. And she said the most amazing thing, Brian, that happens is I pull those notes out 3 months later, or 6 months, or a year later, and I've accomplished most of those goals. And so that's the power of actually writing them down and having those go into our brain, having those go into our subconscious, and we're actually working toward those. And so opportunities get presented that otherwise wouldn't get presented, and we find ourselves doing things and being led in a certain direction because we've written those down and planted those seeds into our subconscious. Writing down goals is definitely one of the habits. I'm very big on health and fitness, and so the habit of what I eat, and I won't bore you with the details, but I'll just say I eat primarily superfoods, almost all superfoods. And so those are habits that got developed. There was a point in my life where I wanted to eat certain foods that I had never eaten before in my life. And a couple of them were Brussels sprouts and beets and mushrooms, and I sweet potatoes was another one. And so what I did was every year, what we do a lot of the times is we want to eat well, and so we say, I'm going to eat all those foods that I just named, and I'm not going to eat any sweets anymore, and I'm not going to drink any soda pop anymore, and I'm going to do it all starting tomorrow. And it doesn't work, right? And the reason it doesn't work is because we haven't developed those habits. And so what I did for 5 years, I did this, was every year I added one new food. And I said, I'm not going to try to eat all those foods that I've never eaten before. And most of them I don't like the taste of. But this year I'm just going to eat beets. And I'm going to eat beets multiple times a week because I know that beets are good for me. And I did that. And then the next year came around when I was doing my January 1st planning, and I said, this year I think I'll do mushrooms. And I had eaten mushrooms on pizza, but I didn't like mushrooms. The really ones that are really good for you don't taste that great if you don't like mushrooms. But I was committed to that. And so whatever it is that we oftentimes, Diana, know what it is that we need to do in order to be successful, but we don't do those things. And I think one of the reasons that we don't do those things is that we make it so overwhelming and so complicated, and we want to trade all of what we're doing for all of what we're trying to do, rather than just it's like if we wanted to eat an elephant and we tried to pick up the elephant and then put it in our mouth. It's absurd, isn't it? And yet that's what we do in our lives. And so how you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And so if we can break down those, and they can be very big, by the way, very, very big goals and dreams and aspirations for ourselves and for others. And if we break those down into small, achievable steps, break them down into habits that cause us to achieve those things, then we'll have a much better chance of achieving our desired goals.
I love the things that you're bringing up because you're talking about intentionality. And yes, you are one of the most intentional people I know. And you also love to do things in an excellent manner. You believe in excellence. So, what does that word excellence actually mean to you?
Yeah, excellence to me is getting up every day, every single day, and doing the things that I know I need to do in order to be successful. And the goal of that is to not only be successful for myself, but also to add value to others. When we think of excellence, Diana, we think of an Olympian standing on the podium receiving the gold medal. Or there was a tennis tournament that we watched the other day, and the person getting the trophy, or the golf tournament at the end of Sunday, at the end of the day, and the player holds up the big golf trophy. We think of that.
Yeah.
But that isn't excellence. What excellence is that player who won the tournament on Sunday after playing very well for 4 days. Every morning, that player was up, probably when even a lot of the players on the tour, a lot of the players in the tournament were still sleeping, and that player was at the range, or that player was in the gym. That player was doing things that he knew he needed to do in order to be successful. And so everybody wants the trophy, right? Everybody wants the gold medal. But the question is, do you want it so bad that you're willing to do what it takes to
Mhm.
earn the trophy or the gold medal? And the answer for most people is no, unfortunately. So excellence for me is getting up and doing those things that people don't see, not what gets in the paper or the magazine or ESPN Sports Center, but all those things that they don't show because it's not glamorous, it's not sexy. In fact, it's actually quite mundane. And if you saw what those people were doing in order to achieve that picture of what you think is excellence, the manifestation of excellence, which is on Sunday when the winner gets the trophy, you wouldn't believe that one caused the other.
Amateurs work until they get it right, professionals work until they can't get it wrong.
Oh, I love that.
When you were talking about goals and that and putting those emotions, excellence is an emotion that you feel. It's that passion that drives you. I watch you over and over again, and you're so passionate about life. And you even have a podcast called Life Excellence. And I love listening to that podcast. In fact, I've got to ask you, who's your favorite podcast guest?
Oh, well, you were, of course.
Of course, of course. Now you've had Nito Cobain on your
I, I,
podcast.
I loved having you on the show. I forget the exact episode, but I think it was around 50, 52, 53. But I loved having you on the show. But seriously, that's an unfair question, and you know that. That's like asking me who my favorite child is. And we have 4 children, as I said, but I have almost 80 podcast guests. And so I don't, in all seriousness, I don't have favorites. I'll say a couple things about that. One is that every single guest on my show has achieved excellence in his or her chosen profession. And I have such tremendous respect and admiration for that. And one of the things that I like about the show is that we have a wide variety of guests. So when I was talking about excellence earlier, I was talking about athletes, right? A tennis player or an Olympic athlete or a golfer. And the reality is excellence is manifested in all professions, in a
Yeah.
variety of professions, and in a variety of ways. And so one of the things that I'm very intentional about, and we can talk more about intentionality, because I think that's really the key ingredient in anything that I've done well or will do well in the future. The root of that is intentionality. But these guests that we've had on the show come from all walks of life, all professions. We've had everything from, we have had a 3-time Olympic swimmer. We have had the first American master sommelier. So if you like wine, that was a big deal back in the early 70s when Eddie Osterland achieved that status, that recognition as the first American master sommelier. But we've had world champions, the world champion squash player and a 4-time world champion chess player. We've had speakers and prolific authors, an audiobook narrator, Julia Whalen, who was amazing. And so Julia is an example of excellence achieved in something that we don't even think about. We all listen to audiobooks probably, or a lot of your audience, I think, probably does. Julia Whalen is the preeminent audiobook narrator in the
Mm,
world, and not a lot of people even know who she is. And so a lot of the people on the show are names that you would recognize. People like Horst Schulze, the founder of Ritz
love
Carlton,
Horse Schultz.
or Brian Tracy, the speaker and personal development expert. But many of our guests, Diana, are people you don't know by name. And what I love about that is it is exposing their stories, sharing their stories on our show so that people can get to know, not only get to know them because they're amazing people on a personal level, but also to understand and learn about and be inspired by the excellence that they've achieved in however that's manifested, whatever it is that they're doing. A couple that stand out, if I can just take a couple more minutes, and I won't say these are favorites, but there are a couple that really stand out as being remarkable feats. And I'm inspired by
Yeah.
remarkable feats. And so, two people that I'll talk about. One is James the Iron Cowboy Lawrence. James
I
Lawrence
love
is
him.
he's an endurance triathlete. And the thing that he did that was most remarkable is he completed 100 full distance Ironman triathlons in 100 days. And now, for those of you who don't know what an Ironman triathlon is, it's 2.4 miles of swimming, 112 miles of cycling, and completed by a 26.2-mile marathon. And that's all in one day. And it took James, by the way, about 13 hours. And he did not one of those, but he did 100 of those in 100 days. And for people who, maybe some of your listeners know people who are triathletes. I know several of them, and they train for months and months and months, and they do one
One.
Ironman triathlon, and then it takes them weeks to recover from that. So I don't know how in the world James did 100 of those. But you know what he did, Diana, on the 101st day after he was all done?
No,
He
I
did,
don't.
he did another one. Apparently he had some gas left in the tank and he went out and just did another one just for kicks.
Just
And
for the kicks
that's
of it.
It's absolutely remarkable. And so, for somebody who shows that kind of human potential, somebody who has accomplished something that remarkable, what that does for me, and I hope what it does for our listeners on the Life Excellence podcast, for your listeners on Becoming More, is that they get inspired, not necessarily to become Ironman triathletes, to even do one, but they get inspired to do what they do at an even higher level. And it certainly has that impact for me.
You know, I had him speak at one of our conferences called Recharge, and amazing, amazing man. Now, at that point, he had done 50 in 50 days. This was quite a few years ago. And I love the fact that you talk about excellence because that's what it's about. It's about doing your very best and then being intentional about doing it even better. And all these people that you've had on the show, let's face it, you connect very well with people. You have this power of connection. Share with us what you do to connect with great people.
Well, I think the start of it, again, is intentionality, Diana. It's the desire to connect with people. I happen to, and I know you and I share this, by the way. You are actually a mentor of mine. And so a lot of the things that I do, I just watch you and see what you do and then try to do some of the same things and maybe do them. If I get to half as well as you do, then
You're
I've
kind.
accomplished something. But it does start with the desire to connect. And not everybody has that. I do think go off, do a tangent for just a second and then I'll come back. But I really believe that it's more important than ever in our society today that we connect with human beings. And we can talk about that. There's a real epidemic of isolationism and people not connecting with people. And so that's a whole nother part of connection. And again, we can talk about that if you want. But for me, what I've learned over time is I'm probably exaggerating, but I'll say the only thing that really matters is connection with people. I've been incredibly blessed in lots of ways. And the thing that is more important to me than any tangible thing, you mentioned that I'm on vacation, than any vacation, any experience, and those are all great and wonderful and they're incredible blessings. If I had all those things and I didn't have human connection, then I'd really be missing the essence of life. And so
Yep. Yeah,
it starts,
we need.
I was just going to say, it starts with that desire to connect with people. And if you have that desire to connect with people, then you orient your life around connection. And so the habits that we were talking about earlier, one of my habits is to connect with people, to be very intentional about that. And I try, again, this is something you and I share, that we value people and we add value to them. And we do that not just in big ways, but what I tell people is I would love to do that in big ways. If that was part of God's plan for me, and to the extent that it is, and I have the opportunity to connect with people, larger audiences or whatever the construct is, then that's great. But we all have the same ability to connect with people transactionally on a daily basis. And so when I was running this morning, I love running in places where people are out and they're pushing their kids in strollers, or they're walking their dogs, or they're riding their bikes, or they're walking, or they're running. And for me, I get as much joy from crossing paths with people and saying good morning to people. And it's funny, it's different today. It doesn't, those greetings aren't always well received, or some people have ear pods in their ears, and so you're not sure they heard them. But for me, that's really important. And so I try very hard and I'm very intentional about connecting with people transactionally. So that could be at the grocery store, or if you at a hotel and you see somebody with a name tag, then I go out of my way to use their name. I was at the gym yesterday yesterday with one of my sons, and the woman there working at the gym, her name was Nicole, and she had her 4-year-old daughter, Emma. And so
Oh,
when I left, I said, "Thank you, Nicole." And I looked over the counter and I said, "Bye, Emma." And Nicole was blown away that I remembered their names. But imagine the impact that that has. And I know sometimes we don't know what people's stories are. And so that's part of adding value too. We don't know what effect just a simple hello has, or a smile, or going out of our way to carry somebody's groceries, or to help somebody put their luggage up on the luggage rack of a plane. But for me, that's a very natural habit. And I think I call that being human. And I think if we were all a little bit more human, that the world would be a better place. And so I try
and
to.
you look for those things, though. I watched you at Exchange, which is a program that Brian and I have attended many, many times with John Maxwell, and I watch you use the people's names to get to know them. You ask about their story. More importantly, though, the following year, because it's a yearly thing, when we go back, you remember their story. It's not just like, "Hey, would you like to tell me your story again?" You actually remember. What are some of the things that you put in place, or are you just that brilliant that you remember everything, like you have photographic memory? Yet, help us all out. How do you remember names?
Yeah, I'm not that brilliant, by the way. I wish I were. I go out of my way
Let
to, I write down people's names and write down something about them. That's what helps me. I'm a pretty good note taker. That's my skill set. And so I gather information about people, and I do that for two reasons. The biggest reason I do that is because I care about people. And so I want to know about and ask people about specific things that are important to them. And that's a way to honor them, and it's a way to add value to them. And so what helps me is taking notes. And you see that. I know you're a note taker, Diana, and you've probably seen, if you've watched me after one of those conversations, is I run, and I'm being a little facetious, but I run back to the place where I was sitting, and I pick up my pencil and I jot down as many things as I can remember from that conversation. And so those kinds of things help me to get to know people. But it really comes, it's not, there's no hidden motive behind that. It's not to get something from the person. It's not to, so that we can do deals together, do business together, or so that I can get something from someone. It's because having that information helps me to add value to people. And so I can, if I know somebody's birthday, and if somehow that came up in conversation, then I will go back and write that down, because of course we wouldn't remember that. Part of it is paying very close attention, because you've been in situations, and you've either, maybe this has happened to you, it's certainly happened to me, it's definitely happened to others around us, when you meet somebody and you hear somebody's name, and if you 5 seconds later had to say what that person's name was, you would be hard pressed to remember it. And
Yeah.
I think that's natural. And
that
so what
that does
isn't
happen.
and so what isn't natural is really paying close attention and getting that name locked in, and getting those pieces of information locked in that you talk about. And for me, I send cards. I don't know how many cards I send every year, but I send cards and notes and physical cards in the US mail. You've probably received one from me, Diana. And
I
the,
have. Yes, I have.
and I do that because that's a demonstration of my admiration for other recipients. And the other reason I do it is because nobody else does it. I tell our kids, when we attend events where
Mhm.
there are keynote speakers, and our kids have had the opportunity and the honor to meet some pretty extraordinary people. And when they're in a group of, say, 100 people, and they stand out because they have the $1 million handshake. That's one of the habits in the life lessons book. And they look people in the eyes, and they treat them with respect, and they ask curious questions. And so they make an impression. And when we leave, and it's a little bit of a joke now, because our kids sort of roll their eyes because they know the answer. But what I used to say, even when they were younger, is I said, now you go home and send Mrs. So-and-so a handwritten thank you note. When you do that, I'm planting a seed. How many
Right.
people do you think will do the same thing? How many cards do you think that person will receive? So how many would you say, Dana? Out of 100
None, none. The one you
one.
send.
And that's what they say. They say one, and they're probably right. And I say, yeah, maybe a couple, maybe somebody. They'll get a couple emails, right? Maybe a text, maybe a Facebook message. But to actually make the effort to find a card and to write it out and to find out where to send it, not very many people do that. And so that's a way to, again, really that's a demonstration of respect and admiration for a person. But it's a way to value them and honor them. And by the way, that does stand out. And people will always remember that. If one of our kids went up to that person 5 years later and said, I met you in Detroit at the Economic Club, and I sent you, they probably wouldn't even say that they sent them a handwritten thank you note. The person would probably say, you sent me that handwritten thank you note. That's how memorable it is. So
Well,
whatever
it is. Go ahead.
whatever we can do to to make an impression on people, make a positive impression on people, to add value to them, and
Yeah.
to do it in a different way than everybody else is all the better. I tell, again, this is something I tell our kids, but I share with everybody. If you ever don't know what to do, just do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. And that's a pretty good starting point, right? You might refine it from there, but that's a pretty good starting point.
Yeah, it's a great one, the 180-degree theory. Well, Brian, you always stand out from the people pile. All these people are there. And by the way, I still have the note that you sent to me, just so people know it does work, right? It makes a difference because people don't get those types of notes. Zig Ziglar told me, Diana, if you sent out 10 notes and those 10 notes, all they said was, congratulations, and you signed your name and you sent them to 10 of your friends, I bet only one of them would call and say, why did you send it? Most of them would be calling and saying, how did you know? Everyone has a story. Now, I want to end with the intentionality because you are very intentional. And our friend John Maxwell wrote the book Intentional Living. And you really do live intentionally. What are some things that you can share with our audience?
I believe that we're put on earth for a purpose and that we ought to live that purpose in the best way we can. And so that starts with intentionality. And so how do we do that? Where are we intentional? I'm intentional about everything that I do. And
That's true.
probably not 100% of the time, but where should we apply that? We should apply that in every area of our lives. So it's like excellence. My personal philosophy and the name of the podcast is Life Excellence, because that's about being excellent in every area of life. So it's not, and it's the same with intentionality. So everybody knows to do a great job at work or in your career or business, right? We're trained to do that. But I want to apply that same standard to my health and to my fitness and to my relationships and to my personal development, my personal growth, and to my faith. And so in each of those areas, I have certain things that I believe. I really think that, and actually Jim Rohn said this, that everything in life comes down to about a half dozen things. You'll remember this, Diana. Jim said it's about a half dozen things that make all the difference in every area of life. And so if we had longer to talk, we could go through each area of life and we could identify, and it might be a little different maybe it's different for you than it is for me. Maybe a couple are different, but by and large, it might be 4 or it might be 7 or it might be 6, but everything in success in life comes down to about half a dozen things. So we could look at health and what is it that we need to do consistently to be healthy, those half dozen things. And if we had more time, we could talk about that. And so that's intentionality. It's identifying what those things are, identifying how is it that I need to live my life in order to achieve the things that I want to achieve in life, to respond to the call of purpose, to be a good steward of the blessings that I've been given, and also how can I add value to others And all of that revolves around intentionality. And once you figure out what that looks like, and I'm a list maker, and so if we were doing that from scratch, we could do a mind map and we could put intentionality at the center in a circle, and then we could put different areas of life, and we could literally list the things, and then we just go do those things. It's like eating the elephant. Then we just go do those things. And we get up in the morning and we do those things. And throughout the day, we do those things. And we do those things day after day and week after week and month after month and year after year. And as we do those, as we move with intention, as we take action toward our desired outcomes and what we believe is our calling for our life if we're people of faith. And it really works out pretty well with that formula. And there are certainly other ways to do it. The key is figuring out a way that works for you and then go do those things and do them consistently. And that's where the intentionality comes into play.
Well, the interesting part to me, I love the mind map and the goals and how you break it down and how everything, and then you just look at it and then you say, well, just go live that way. See, you know what you want to be known for. I can tell you do because you're so intentional about your life. A lot of people just go through life letting other people design it for them. You actually design your life. And that's what's so exciting. So, what are the final words that you want to give to us today about designing your life and how important that is?
Yeah, I guess I would end with this, and it's timely. If Diana, if we talked about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I probably wouldn't end with this. I was telling you before we started the show that my father passed away 6 days ago, and he was 92 years old, and he was a wonderful man of faith. And a wonderful man, even that aside, although that was certainly a big part of his life. And he was incredibly grateful for the life that he was blessed with. And he loved life and he lived life. He was an active golfer and tennis player and volleyball player through the age of, he grew up
Wow.
in eastern Pennsylvania, a small town called Valley View. His father was a farmer, and so he grew up learning to use and repair all the farm equipment. And at the end of life, it was very, very sad last week and actually over the last couple weeks because we all knew how it was going to end. I think some people are surprised by that sometimes. They're surprised when that happens. And by the way, it doesn't always happen when people are 92. Sometimes it happens when with young children, and sometimes it happens with teenagers, and sometimes it happens with young adults, and sometimes it happens with elderly people. And even when it's expected, it's still sad. But one of the things that I really loved was watching my dad pass, and he was good, and he was good because he knew he lived a rich life, and he wasn't wealthy, but he lived a rich life because he was surrounded his entire life by people, and he loved people and he loved activities. He loved doing the things that he enjoyed most with the people who were closest to him. And it's a wonderful model. And I didn't need that model, but he's one of a handful of people, Diana, who have made a tremendous impact on me. And the intentionality that I live with, the intentionality that drives me isn't something that I was born with. It's something that I learned from people around me who have had tremendous influence on my life. And it really comes down to a couple things. The essence of life for me is about being grateful for everything that you have. And if you woke up today, then you have something to be grateful for. A lot of people wake up and they say, well, Diana, it's great. You have this lifestyle and the life that you've been blessed with, and that's great for you, but I don't have those things. If you woke up today, if you're listening to or watching this podcast, then you have that blessing. And you have lots of other blessings too, the people around you. And we'll talk about that the next time, because that's a whole gratitude and the blessings that we've all received is a whole nother talk. But it's because of that gratitude that I want to make sure that I live my best life, that I wake up every day and I strive to do the things that I know I need to do to be successful. And successful isn't about money. It's about achieving excellence in every area of life, and wherever we are, whether we're at a 1 on a scale of 1 to 10 or an 8 on a 1 to 10 scale of 1 to 10, we start from wherever we are, and we can learn and grow and improve. And we always have the ability, no matter what happens in a day, to be grateful for the blessings of the day. And we also have the opportunity every single day to add value to people. And I think if we end each day being grateful for the day that we were blessed with, and we can look back on a couple things that happened during the day where we added value to people, then over time that becomes a pretty rich life.
It becomes a great life. And you definitely are living a great life because that's the way you live every single day, just like you did right now, adding value to all of us. And we do just offer peace and condolences to your family. Thank you for being on this podcast so much, Brian. We greatly appreciate you. And for all of you who desire to become more, subscribe to the Becoming More podcast and listen to Brian's as well, Life Excellence with Brian. And so, Brian, just thank you. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Diana. I love you and I appreciate you, and I'm honored to be on your show today. Thanks for having me.
Love you back. Bye bye.